Good day.
Good day. Welcome, listeners and fellow classmates.
Hold on!
into
You stop first.
Welcome, fellow listeners and fellow classmates. In this podcast, the Gothic Chronicles podcast, we will venture on a journey that embarks the two haunting tales: The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe and House Taken Over by Giulio Cortázar. Join us as we compare and contrast these Gothic elements of melancholy, isolation and decay. Now, let's begin with the Edgar Allan Poe's story, The Fall of the House of Usher. And this Gothic masterpiece, it takes place in a desolate world of the Usher family, where the decaying mansion mirrors the family's deteriorating mental and physical state. Throughout the story, we witness the psychological torment and the psychological suffering that the family witnesses.
Well, yes, the Usher house becomes a character in itself, reflecting the inner turmoil and the turmoil that it basically inhabits. I mean, the crumbling walls, the melancholic atmosphere, and the oppressive darkness overall just creates unease in the mood.
Absolutely. Now let's turn our heads and attention into the other story, The House Taken Over by Giulio Cortázar. In this Argentinian tale, and focus on Argentinian tale because this adds a lot of symbolism to the story, because the working class in the Argentinian society was used to get so worked up that the nuclear family broke up because the father and the mother used to work and the kids didn't get enough attention from their family.
Well, yes, and this part of the idea and the symbolism that it creates, it really helps develop the story more, because it shows also how a family lives through this Argentinian lifestyle that was back then. Also applies to the story that middle class was the reason that higher class existed, and this shows a basic family that is considered to be a higher class family and how what it goes through. And it shows that just because you're rich doesn't mean that you don't have any problems.
Yeah, but unlike the House of Usher, the decaying mansion story, here we have a house that is unexpectedly invaded by an unknown creature or unknown force. And I think this unknown force symbolizes the upper class.
The upper class, yes. And House Taken Over explores the theme of the unknown and the fear of losing control, similarly to Poe's story and idea. Well, the characters are forced to confront their fears and abandon their familiar surroundings, and the house, once a place of comfort, becomes a symbol of vulnerability and uncertainty.
While I believe that both stories involve the house as a metaphorical entity, it takes an approach from a really different angle. Now, the Fall of House of Usher, house represents the decay of the family and the descent into madness. On the other hand, the House Taken Over symbolizes the invasion of the unknown and the loss of personal identity.
Well, it is fascinating how these authors use the physical space of the house to reflect the characters and the psychological and emotional states. And it's also very fascinating and mysterious because it applies more drama to the idea and the way the story builds up. And the house in both stories have extensions to the characters themselves, amplifying their fears, anxieties, and inner struggles. This fear and their mood and their emotional state also sort of represents the house and what's happening to the house.
Indeed, and while both tales evoke a sense of mystery and supernatural, they do it in distinct ways. Now, Poe's story delves into the realms of Gothic and melancholy and gloominess more than the House Taken Over. But House Taken Over gives a sense of vagueness, and an unknown force that is hunting the house is very ambiguous to the reader, that creates a blurring line between reality and the uncanny.
course,
yeah, the unsure. We don't really know what's happening, so it creates a sense of mystery and that makes us scared while reading the story.
Basically the unnerving side and the side which is disturbing. Well, that's a very interesting point, Haydar, and I would say that Poe's Gothic sensibilities create a sense of terror and dread, while Cortazar's story leans more towards the psychological and emotional states and the existential, and also leaving us questioning the nature of the invasion and its true meaning.
Now, each story is very special and unique in its own way, but how each story explores the psyche and the power of the house is simple through their captivating narratives and their fragility of the stories. Now, Poe and Cortazar create boundaries of reality that intrigue relationships between our inner world and inner conflicts and inner thoughts and physical spaces we inhabit. Now, location plays a crucial role in both the stories, the House of Usher and House Taken Over. What do you think, Ismail?
I mean, symbolism plays a crucial role in both stories, as we can tell, with adding layers of meaning and enhancing the overall atmosphere. In the fall of the House of Usher, the house itself represents the crumbling state of the Usher family's lineage, because as the house falls, the family falls. I mean, its decay mirrors an mental and physical deterioration of the characters. Additionally, the torn and dark, murky body of water surrounding the house symbolizes death more than I could say. I mean, and the impending doom that leans over the narrative overall. I mean,
if I was there, I wouldn't be there.
I
would be running.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The house taking over, symbolism takes a different form. Yeah? And the invasion of the house symbolizes the loss of control and the ephemeral nature of security overall. The mysterious force that drives the characters out of the home and represents the unknown as basically the fears we cannot fully comprehend, because to them it's a mystery, and so is to us. And the fleeting nature of stability is extremely uncomprehendable.
Now, yeah, I think what the author is trying to do with this vagueness and ambiguity and melancholy, I think that's very smart, which translates into the reader. Now, moving on location, both stories utilize the setting to create a sense of confinement and isolation. The Fall of House of Usher, the isolated mansion is surrounded by desolate landscapes, emphasizing the characters' the attachment from the outside world. The secluded nature of the house intensifies and psychological tension and adds to the feeling of being trapped within their own minds. Now, when I was reading the House of Usher, I was really scared by the build-up of the story. It's the first time that I read a story that has such unique build-up.
Exactly, it had a lot of thrill coming with it. Like it had kind of drum beats as we basically read throughout, because it gives drama, and the author definitely knows how to apply that.
Yeah, and how he introduces the story and the characters and the Asher family also is quite interesting.
I mean, that exactly shows the reason there is a lot of interesting elements is because the house and the family is extremely similar personalities, basically. I mean, similarly, in House Taken Over, the location also acts as a catalyst for the story's events. The confined space of the house becomes a prison and isolating the characters from the outside world. I mean, I would never want that, and no one ever would like to be isolated and kept away from their own choices. They don't have a choice because it heightens the sense of mystery and claustrophobia, amplifying the impact of the invasion and the subsequent displacement.
Now, lastly, let's explore the magical elements that is present in both stories. While the Fall of House of Usher leans more toward the supernatural, with hints of the eerie presence of Madeline, Usher, House Taking Over incorporates a more subtle form of magic and enchantment. In the House of Usher, I was really surprised when Madeline transformed into that creature. It really added that magical element to the House of Usher. But while House Taking Over was really vague, more than supernatural.
I mean, it was really mysterious, and it also needed a lot of thinking on what's going on, because that's what the author's trying to do, get his brains into the story.
He's blurring the parallel realities of the stories, which
That's what makes the story interesting.
Yeah, it makes it inexplicable.
Mysterious, of course. I mean, indeed, the magical events and elements in both stories add a sense of wonder and intrigue. They serve as catalysts for the events, boosters that apply to the events and the ideas in general. And they provide a touch of ethereal, inviting readers to question the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural, which also puts our brains to the test and gives us more interest throughout the story as a whole.
As we conclude, we discussed evocation, magical elements, symbolism, and we discovered how both of those stories utilizes those elements differently from a different angle and a different point of view. While both stories employ these devices to enhance the gothic atmosphere, the melancholy, the gloominess, they do with distinct intentions and effects.
Yes, and of course, after all, overall effects, side effects, all comes with the story. It just needs thinking, it needs a lot of brain power. That's what the authors are trying to use.
Dr. Hayden.
Yeah, Doctor, Mr. You know why? Because I'm gonna be a businessman, you be a doctor. I'm gonna be running your hospital,
Thank you so much, Mr. Salim and fellow classmates, for listening to us and letting us present our ideas and views and perspectives. Mr. Muhammad Sher,
Yeah.
Dr. Haider, let's go!
Put that